Hi, I'm Andrea Johnston, entrepreneur, communications leader, and a believer in the power of women and the unlimited potential in all of us. On Women I Want You to Know, we shine a light on real women who are breaking barriers, blazing new trails, and redefining what leadership looks like. These are real conversations about ambition, drive, difficult choices, and impact, the kind you won't hear anywhere else. Because every woman's story has the power to propel another from dream to reality. This is Women I Want You to Know. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Women I Want You to Know. I'm Andrea Johnston, and I am so excited to welcome you to today's episode and to introduce you to Katherine Andersen. Katherine, I got to know in an unusual circumstance. I'm going to kind of call it like adult summer camp, where you're hiking on a mountain and you're thrown together as roommates in a barn and looking your absolute best at all
Of
times.
course.
But it's really an incredible experience. Katherine has had a really incredible career in banking. I love talking to women who are leading in male dominated industries and showing us what shattering the glass ceiling really looks like. And Katherine is the head of US Life Science and Healthcare at HSBC Innovation Banking, which I love that innovation banking. We have to talk more about that. She joined in 2023 to really help launch this global platform for the innovation economy. She previously had led life science and healthcare at SVB from 2015 to 2023, but had also had leadership roles in banks like Wells Fargo, Merrill Lynch, and also GE Capital. So, Katherine, I am so happy to have you here today. And I can't wait to share more about your story. But before we dig into all the professional stuff, I have to tell everyone, like, you're an Ironman. And that was like so intimidating for me when we were hiking. I'm like, here's my roommate. She's this badass, amazing athlete. And I'm just hoping I can get through my 20 miles.
Oh,
But you just got back from Spain.
yes, did just get back from Marbella, which is in southern Spain, for the Ironman 70.3 2025 World Championship. So that is a half Ironman, technically speaking, but I really like that distance for a variety of reasons. Been doing that distance since 2019 or so, and believe very much in big, hairy, audacious goals and, don't care how long these things take. But I'm a big believer in having a kind of far-fetched goal that you can, work on just a little bit every single day.
How was it?
Terrifying.
I'm actually relieved to hear you say that.
It was, I love this distance and I love triathlon for a variety of reasons, but one of the big ones is that it teaches and rewards resilience. And there's always something every single race I've done, and I've done 10. Every single race that I've done, something pops up. Usually multiple things, and you have to strategize, you have to problem solve very much in the moment, and it can completely throw your mindset, it can throw you off, it can ruin your goals that you had maybe for the day and for that race, and you just have to keep moving forward, and I love that about that sport. And if I think that's probably one of the key reasons why I've really kind of fallen in love with it over the past 5 to 6 years.
Well, and I have to believe that resilience and persistence and all of the things that it takes to be able to meet the moment where you face that challenge and the unexpected is very much in parallel to things that happen from a career standpoint. And especially with the kind of career that you have chosen, where banking always seems to have its challenging moments, its ebbs and flows, and you've witnessed a lot of that directly in your career. But how has what you've experienced in the Ironmans and the triathlons influenced your career and how you show up at work?
I'm a big believer, I guess, based on, personal just life experiences and things that I've learned and a long list of stuff that I've made mistakes, in throughout life that you just have to keep moving forward. And it's one foot in front of the other. And, you can't control what happens to you in any given day. You really can't. But the good news is in life that you can choose and you do have control over how you respond or how you react or what you do with that news that has kind of fallen in your lap. And that's triathlon. That is the Ironman circuit. That is, my professional career. That is life. And, I wasn't always like that. I didn't always operate that way. Certainly in my 20s, I think trying to control more of the outcome, both personally and professionally, and just continuing to fail and learn the hard way that's a wasted energy, and there's something lovely to be said, I think, about this decade of life where reach this point of acceptance of like, gosh, I'm not going to invest time there. I can't change the outcome. What happens, happens, but I am going to focus on the things that are within my control. And whether that is a, big, hairy, audacious goal that's 5 to 10 years down the line, or just how you show up for people in spite of having a bad day.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that is such a small but very significant thing because it's something we all encounter every day where we have those crappy days or the morning is off to the worst start. And it's like, okay, so how is this going to translate in the way I'm showing up for other people? And similarly, the rush to often judge other people for the way they're showing up, not knowing fully what has transpired in their background that day.
Great point.
Now, you've had an interesting path. I remember when we spoke previously for the editorial piece we did on LinkedIn, one of the things that really I will forever remember is that you were the kid who chose economics summer camp over sport camps.
Thank you for bringing that up again.
I mean, it's just left a lasting impression on me,
Yes,
Catherine. I
Andrea,
gotta be
I was the
honest.
Uber nerd. Thank you. Thank you.
No, but I mean, I also find it like incredibly inspiring that you did that and look at where it's led you. So share with us a little bit more about this journey and how you've come to this place and what, innovation banking really means.
Sure, sure. So rewind to 16 years old briefly, perhaps, or 15. Yes, I went to economics camp in high school, and it was on the recommendation of my AP history teacher, and we didn't even have an economics class in high school. But I very much respected him, and I felt really proud to get a recommendation from a teacher who had worked at that school and for many many years and was incredibly well respected. So had no idea what I was getting myself into. My mom drove me down to William and Mary, where I spent a week economics camp, and I loved it. I just loved it. I loved it. I think, thinking back, it's because all of those laws and rules that come up in economics, you can apply to real life, right? So you're talking about diminishing marginal return or supply and demand, or quite simply just the psychology of human beings, which, I've really started to have an appreciation for over the past decade, just in a variety of leadership positions. So much of what I think any leader does, beyond just strategy and execution, is in navigating the psychology of humans and leading with empathy and compassion, to your point earlier. So I fell in love with it. And so I declared economics to be my primary major going into school when I was 17. I had no idea what I wanted to do. Certainly didn't know I wanted to be a banker, or even quite frankly what that meant at the time. But graduated, was accepted into GE's financial management program, which was really a commercial banking program at the time, a two-year program with 6 months rotations. And admittedly, I had no idea what commercial banking was. No idea. The only thing that I had heard about with regards to banking was investment banking. What is commercial banking? And I certainly didn't appreciate at the time how you can get a lot of those aspects of business development and prospecting and just relationship building that you would kind of expect on the investment banking side, but on the commercial banking side. And so, while I've tried a lot of different things under the umbrella of banking in my career, M&A and investment banking, commercial banking, audit, like all the things, I kept coming back to commercial banking, and it's something that I really, really love.
So what is it about commercial banking that you love?
Yeah, I think it's the focus on, relationships first and foremost. And, we never want to show up in a way that, is just like a typical product partner. You have to be adding some value, and you have to be, coming at it from the perspective of, you want to show up and be a trusted advisor. We want to show up and be an extension of a C-suite, really, particularly for early stage companies in innovation. You need that, who are running incredibly lean. And that's different. That's different just than just showing up and saying, "Hey, here's the list of 7 things that we can do in terms of products." Why don't you check the box next to the ones that are most interesting to you? Like, that's not that is not what we do, and I have a sincere appreciation for that, and that I think is really different. And then I have the absolute pleasure of spending all of my time in life science and healthcare, which, as a banker, it doesn't get any better than that. It really doesn't.
I mean, the people are so fascinating having been a service provider for the life sciences and healthcare industry. Part of what I think is so magical about this sector is the incredible innovators, forward thinkers, researchers, the passion that people are bringing to their business. Isn't it so exciting?
It is the passion. You said it, it's passion, right? And what I really appreciate, in this industry in particular, and I've spent a lot of time in tech, a lot of time in other industries outside of life science throughout my career. What I really appreciate about life science and healthcare is that, these companies are, especially very early on, building based on like a hope and a dream, right? And most definitely no promise that any of this is going to work out. In fact, more often than not, it won't. But there is this passion and drive that they can contribute to the greater good. And that just has made, I think, all the difference in the world in terms of this type of community that I get to play just a tiny little part in. Has been amazing. And certainly, without any doubt, the highlight of my career.
I love hearing that because I think sometimes people paint the industry with such a negative brush because they only see commercial aspects that they find fault with. But they don't see so much of that hope and dream, as you said, so much of that optimism that if the industry and the leaders didn't have, we'd never get to that commercial place. And yet, I do believe that, especially having worked in biotech, so much of what motivates companies is the desire to improve the lives of patients, and they see these opportunities to create, at this point, even near cures for some of these diseases, and they go all in, and it's pretty special, and I wish more people got to see that side of the industry.
No, I could not agree more. And honestly, while I was a generalist, back in the day, what really drove me into this industry initially was I had a good friend whose daughter was the same age as my now 15-year-old, but was 2 at the time and came down with leukemia prior to CAR T. And the outcome was not good. And that was really the first time I had more of a front row seat to just the immense challenge to navigating the healthcare system and the huge opportunity that all of us have ahead in terms of creating more innovative therapies to serve human health. And that was the inflection point for me. I mean, I can't remember the exact day, but there was definitely a discussion with my husband at the time when we had 2 little kids at home. And I'm like, if I'm going to be working these hours and I'm gonna be away from my kids this much, gosh, it has to be contributing to the greater good. I need to be part of this story. I need to be part of the solution. I'm gonna figure that out. And I was laser focused on life science from there on out. And now look, like we have these we have kids who don't have the same fate because of all of the innovation that's happened over the past 15 years. That's incredible. It's incredible.
That's such a good point. It's so incredible, and it's really, like, very motivating, I feel like, for why people wanna continue to show up in this industry, despite sometimes the very negative perception that people may have, and sometimes the headlines that take away from all the amazing and good things that are happening in the business. And you mentioned your 2 kids at the time, but how many kids do you have
I
now?
have 3, and 2 of them are much taller than I am.
Oh, wait, when they outnumber the parents, I have nothing but respect
Ugh,
because I don't know how you do the juggle.
6 admittedly, it's a heck of a lot easier now. My kids are 16, 15, and 12, boy, and girl, and our oldest just got his license, so that is a huge help, but it's hard. It's hard, and I would say, the first certainly 5, and if I'm honest, probably 10 years of just being a parent was just I had a ton of mom guilt. Especially with all the travel and work and, feeling like you're always dropping a couple balls every day, both on the personal and the professional front. And, it took a lot of it took a lot of mistakes, I guess I'd say, over that period of time for me to just learn to provide myself space and grace. And that made all the difference in the world.
It's funny because that's a theme that has come up in a lot of the interviews with the women we talk to on Women I Want You to Know, and it's so hard, right? Because there's the mom guilt, and then there's also the mom comparator syndrome, where it's like, this woman's in there every day volunteering at the school and the the
Nope.
baked goods and all the things that I was never able to participate in or do, and so that just added to the guilt, and it
You just gotta pick your spots, you know? I've learned over the years, and this is probably gonna sound awful, but, I pick my spots, and, like, in those spots, I'm gonna get an A, and the rest I just absolutely let go, and that's been hugely helpful. Beginning of every school year, I will proactively email my kids' teachers, not so much now that my boys are in high school, but would proactively email the teachers and say, essentially, "Don't call me, I'll call you." Like, I'm in a 2 working parent household. My husband and I divide and conquer. I am more often than not, I'm not gonna be the person that's in the classroom all the time, but I will absolutely sign up for, a couple field trips, and I'll be there all day to help. You have to pick your spots. But it's also difficult, I think, in many towns, probably, a number around the Boston area in particular. There's an expectation that the mom's the point of contact. And, I have found that irritating over the years. My poor husband, though, has been crushed by that a couple times because he contributes so much to our family dynamic. And it's kind of like, well, who am I? Right? So I think as a society, we need to be more mindful of unique family dynamics, and there are, 2 working parent households do exist. Thank you very much. They do exist.
I live in North Carolina, so I 100% and my husband can 100% relate to that. I can remember being on the mommy tennis team text chain, and I'd be like, "I'm adding my husband to the chain
Exactly.
because we divide and
That's
conquer,
right.
and we both need to be informed," and
That's right.
it is tough because I think society still wants to subscribe to certain gender norms, and while that may be true in certain families, it is important to have a broader view so that everybody feels included and everybody feels like they can participate. I mean, I think a lot of the dads out there would say that they love and benefit from having that space to create those relationships with their kids and be part of a team mentality when it comes to conquering the many challenges and time constraints families today feel.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And what's changed for me over the past probably 15 years or so of this is like I am unapologetic about it now. Nope. My husband has to be included. We are a team. It takes a village. This is how it's going to be. Period. End of story.
And that's okay. I mean, I think the more we can normalize that, sort of the better, and I've always compared it to a team. I always just feel like a family is in every way a team, and the kids even have their role to play on the team, and everybody, has to be sort of moving in the same direction with, kind of mission aligned goals and purpose, and I also think it helps the kids because then they feel like they contribute and they learn to be independent and, thrive in their lane. I don't know, I think there's, like, a lot of positives that come out of it as opposed to just being sort of like the negative that I still think overshadows a lot of it.
I completely agree with that.
What are other things that you have found in navigating your career as well as kind of family that are sort of key lessons learned or insights that you feel like would be helpful to the women listening to this podcast?
I mean, the one thing that just, pops up into my head is you have to invest in yourself. I am, I think it's really important to appreciate the mind body connection and taking care of yourself. If you are not sleeping, eating, having some kind of exercise, right? It doesn't need to look like, running or cardio. It can be whatever works for you, but like invest in yourself. I know for me, I have definitely learned the hard way, in particular over the past 10 years, that I am a much better mom. I am a much better wife. I'm a much better, manager and probably just a much better human being overall if I'm kind of putting the oxygen mask on first. And, especially when there are hard moments or hard days, I'll go out and do a 30-minute run or I'll just do something to get my mind right. And it has made all of the difference in the world. So you have to take care of yourself. And I think especially when you have a demanding job and little kids and a seemingly, unending schedule of stuff that's just like looming, it can be really easy to not do that, but you will get far more bang for your buck, and everybody will be happier if you do, start there, invest in yourself, and acknowledge when you need a break. That's okay.
I'm so glad you said that because I think as someone who maybe grew up in an era where that was viewed as selfish somehow, or, you were already pursuing a career, you need to then also be all the other things to all the people. And then having burnt out as a result of that mindset, I really just can't underscore enough what you're saying and how women, especially as young and as early as possible, embrace that mindset and take care of themselves. Because I feel like if you can incorporate it into your schedule and into your daily life, then it becomes something that once you do have kids and you have other things going on, it's so much easier to maintain that and to continue to keep taking care of yourself as part of like your core values.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, be unapologetic. Like this is if it's something that's really important to everybody, right? And how you show up for yourself and everybody around you. I mean, I had a nanny years ago when our kids were really, really little. I'll never forget this. I came home from work. I was like, I need to get out there. I just need to do a little run. Like it has just been a hard day. And she gave me such tremendous grief, called me a bad mom,
Oh my
and
God.
and I like burst into tears when I went outside. Like unapologetic, do not let somebody else's whatever is going on inside their head make you feel bad. Don't apologize for taking care of yourself. And I wish I could go back and give that, 35-year-old like a big hug and be like, "What? Just you're gonna fire her anyway. Don't worry about it." Like let it go. Like if she has her own issues, let it go. Don't internalize that. It's not about you. So that's kind of the other learning maybe over the years is like it's never about you. Some people unfortunately are just in a different spot and just can sometimes go about their day without that empathy and compassion. Don't just let that bounce right off. Don't take that in.
And I think that that's probably something that is really important when you are in certain careers and in certain environments where it can be all too easy for things to come off as highly critical or things to come off as being a put down. But, you just kind of have to rise to the occasion, and the only way through is through.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, I would get the question, after going through a tremendous amount of just personal, like family loss over a pretty short period of time, I would get the question and still do on occasion get the question, like, how did you do that? Like, how did you make it through that? Like I had an option, I had a husband and kids to show up for. I had family to show up for. I had a mortgage to pay. There was no option. So it's one foot in front of the other. I couldn't change the outcome of any of those things. But what I could do was invest more in myself.
Well, and you invest not only in yourself, but you invest in your community and in other people. I mean, as I said at the beginning of this, I had the chance to get to know you because we did the Timmerman Traverse to Benefit Life Science Cares together in August of 2025. And I feel like that commitment to the community and to all that Life Science Cares stands for in terms of education and combating poverty and really helping our communities, and you spend real time and effort to make that happen, both the time on the mountain as well as the fundraising. But you also did Kilimanjaro a year ago to benefit Damon Runyon Cancer Research Foundation. And Young Lee is another woman we want people to know. And we both have interviewed her for the podcast as well as on the LinkedIn series. But you also experienced a lot of personal trauma and challenges in your Kilimanjaro journey. Would you mind sharing a little bit about your mom and sort of everything that you went through with your experience on the mountain?
Yeah, so our family unfortunately has been impacted by, my own personal cancer journey and I'm fine. Fortunately caught it very, very early. Thank you to all of our life science and healthcare, you know, connections and community for that. But, we've been impacted by ALS. I lost my mother-in-law to ALS in 2019 before being diagnosed with my own, cancer that we were able to kind of address in short order, fortunately. My dad passed away with congestive heart failure. It ended up being about 1 to 2 weeks before the pandemic. his little sister shortly thereafter from an aneurysm, my only, like, last remaining McDonald family member, if you will. And then we found that my mom, in living on her own during the pandemic, her dementia, which, you know, we had a sense was an issue, ramped substantially with her living on her own. And we found out about that 'cause she was in a car accident, had her license taken away. She was in the country in Virginia, had no way to get anywhere all of a sudden. So we took her in and she moved in with me. My husband is an absolute saint. Again, cannot cannot stress that enough. He is my rock in all things. But, we had the good fortune of being able to have her move in with us. And so I served as primary caregiver for, the better part of 2 years as her dementia just continued to progress. We moved her into a dedicated, dementia care facility. Things continued to progress. And when we went on that trip to Kilimanjaro and we were at high camp. I was one of those executives. I'm somewhat embarrassed to admit, but it was like holding my phone high in the air, trying to get service, checking my email kind of thing. Fortunately, did get a bar, but in that moment, got a bar and got an incoming text from the hospice nurse saying that they were going to take my mom off everything except for morphine. And we were still I was a day maybe away from summiting in the middle of Africa. And of course, then you start to do the math and you problem solve just like in a race. What can I do? How can I get out of this? What do I do with this information, knowing that I'm not going to be able to change the outcome? But like, what do I do in this moment? And I just grieved. That's all I could do. So she passed away the next morning. Didn't mean for this.
No, no, nor did I, but, like, I can't imagine how first of all, what that whole experience was like, but also, like, to be experiencing something so transformative, both mentally, emotionally, personally, but then also physically with what you were doing on the mountain, like, the convergence of those things, it just must have had such a profound impact on you
Oh, I
in
mean,
all ways.
and there was no better example of you can't control what happens to you, but you can't control how you react and what you do than that moment. And honestly, living through having unfortunately had to live through a lot of loss up to that point, I made a ton of mistakes in how to address that. I buried myself in work. I probably showed up, if I'm being honest, not in the way that, my team or company appreciated at times because I was just trying to process. And so, what I do appreciate from that experience is not just the team and community that we had. I mean, everybody knew, what had happened and what was kind of coming up for me over the coming hours, and I was completely blanketed in love. I mean, when we ultimately summited and all 20 of us made it, which was incredible, not your typical statistic for Kilimanjaro, but the hugs and love and tears, that were shared with me from folks who never met my mom, but just had so much empathy and compassion for that situation. Ugh, that is our community that we have the pleasure of living in, and it's different. These are not your, typical fill in the blank other industry executives. Like, these are incredibly smart, compassionate human beings that make this industry just so incredible. And so even though I didn't have any family in the moment, like, I felt like I had all the support in the world.
No, and I think, like, being surrounded by a group of people whose entire life is dedicated to patients and to patient care, like, also is just a very different mindset and understanding of that situation in that moment. And how has all of that sort of influenced how you now show up and how you help other people handle grief and handle navigating in these circumstances? Because I personally find I feel like I can never show up in the right way when you wanna support people, but it's often if you've not walked in those specific shoes, it's hard to know what the right thing to do is, so I always, like, appreciate the advice and the perspective of, how to be that support person.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's hard to know what to do and what to say if somebody loses somebody or if they have, an aging parent and they are serving as the caregiver. Just show up. Just show it really doesn't matter. Just show up. What often happens is people are so scared of saying or doing the wrong thing that they don't. And I think it is even more important to show up after the loss because moving on is so difficult and it takes time. And you get to a point where you're like, God, the world feels like it's just moving forward and everybody forgot. And because there's a fear of like, I might say or do the wrong thing, or so and so feels like it seems like they're having a tough day, but I don't know what to say. Just show up. It can be in like giving somebody a hug, saying, "Hey, I'm thinking of you. Like, I know this has been a tough year. Like, just know I'm thinking of you. I'm an ear, I'm a shoulder." Shooting them a text. Like, you really cannot go wrong. You really can't, but you gotta show up.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. That's really good advice because I think so many people, myself included, often become paralyzed by the fear of doing the wrong thing that it gets in the way of just showing up. And you're right, it's just being
And
there.
it's okay even if you're like, "Gosh, I don't even know what to say." If you are facing a situation where you have a good friend or family member that has been through something that you haven't, that's okay. "Hey, I love you. I haven't walked in your shoes. I can't even fathom how hard this is, but just know that I'm here and I support you and I love you." It's very easy. That's it.
That's such good advice. Thank you for sharing that. And I think many of us and those listening to this have all faced circumstances where we want to be there for the people we love. And we just want to make sure that we're caring for them and meeting them in the moment in the best possible way. So I appreciate you sharing all of that because I know that that is not difficult. And I mean, that it is very difficult. And it's not easy to talk about the things that are raw and that bring out the real kind of emotion of loss and of navigating so many of the challenging things that your family has been through. But I also keep hearing in my head what you started with it, which is so much of this is about putting one foot in front of the other and just continuing to be resilient and to move forward. And you've done that even in the most challenging of circumstances. And as you continue to move forward and put one foot in front of the other, what are you looking forward to? What are you looking toward? What are the things that are keeping you motivated and inspired as you think about, especially the year ahead?
Yeah. So I heard a phrase, this is years ago, probably in one of the many trainings that I've had the good fortune of doing in my career, but I heard the phrase of servant leadership. And, they were explaining different types of leadership. And I kind of got under the hood of that. I'm like, that's what motivates me. And it's not just in my career, it's just this concept of wanting to be really purposeful with my time. I don't wanna show up like it's the Katherine Andersen show, like, that's so not my jam. I'm sure by the way, I'm sure I have showed up that way in some form or fashion throughout my life. Apologies to anybody who's experienced that. But, like, I just wanna give back, So if that means, contributing to nonprofits doing incredible things like Women in Bio, I joined the board in February, I have the pleasure of supporting women at every single stage of their career in biotech, like, how cool is that? Or Life Science Cares, helping to create a level playing field for food security and shelter and education, like, yeah, sign me up. I wanna do some of that, with my time that I have on this earth. And at work, it's like, gosh, how can I make your path to whatever you wanna do? And, 5, 10, 15 years from now, how can I make that easier? I'm not here for anything else. Like, if I can just continue to find ways to give back and make people's lives maybe a little bit easier and enable them to bring extra empathy and compassion to the table, that's awesome. And that's engaging for me. And just choose kindness, right? And, it's been really, really kind of nice to see the kids experience more of the real world, I guess, over the past couple of years as they get older. Our 16-year-old works in the local pizza shop. And I picked him up before he had his license. I picked him up from work one day and he's like, gosh, somebody came in and it seemed like they just weren't having a good day and they were yelling at me and it was really stressful. And it really kind of ruined the rest of my day. I felt bad. I didn't do anything wrong, but I felt really bad. And I'm like, gosh, well, what are you going to do about that? He's like, "I will never treat anybody like that, even if I'm having a bad day," you know? So it's like those life experiences I think are so important, and it's a great example of what we've been discussing throughout this, which is like, you can have a crappy day, you can have a bad experience, somebody can yell at you, you can, have a major disagreement with your husband or boss or whomever else, but you can still choose kindness.
Yes. Yes, and yes. Well, thank you for making time and for being here today and sharing more of your story. If there are any other points or questions people have, I would encourage you to follow Katherine on LinkedIn. We will have all of the links in the show notes, as well as a link to her profile from our Women I Want You to Know editorial series. Katherine, thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you very soon.
It sounds great, Andrea. Thanks for having me. Nice to see you.
Thank you for being here today and sharing in this inspiring story from Women I Want You to Know. Please leave a review and share this episode with another woman in your life. And join the conversation and connect with us on LinkedIn and Instagram, and keep fueling the future for female founders and leaders. Thank you.